Hi everyone, my name's Peter. I'm a botanical horticulturist here at the Hortus Botanicus Amsterdam. And in this episode we're going to look at where to put your plants in your home based on examples in the botanical garden. Let's go. Yeah, the most plants that people have in their houses are either succulents or tropical plants. Yeah, they have very different light requirements and it's often difficult to tell if you don't know anything about the plants. So the first thing you can do, and that's the first thing even professionals can do, is know the plants, so you can look up information and from that you can deduce where you should be growing plants. In the tropical house you can look at some examples of things that people commonly have in their homes. So just right off the top is on the wall here's tillandsias. They're air plants, and these things in nature they can grow in the full sun and then going down to the shade, and the way you tell when it needs full sunshine or not is if you look at the color of the leaves. The more gray or white the leaves or leaf parts, the more sunshine it can take. And the greener the plant, like this one, this shows you that they need less sunlight and a bit more shade. And that goes for all tillandsias. So right up there is one called Tillandsia xerographica, and that one really grows in the desert in the full sunshine. If you could look behind us over there, there's a house plant that lots of people have and probably also recognize. This is Calathea zebrina, and yeah, quite sure people recognize this plant as a house plant. The sun has moved a bit already, and so what you can deduce from this, where this plant is growing, and if you were to Google it and so on, it grows on the forest floor. So there's already an indication that it gets a bit more shade from the trees. And also, there's a very interesting thing about this plant. Often if a plant has a red leaf on the underside, that's also an indication that it grows in a lower light environment. More examples. This is also a very good example over here of epiphytes. Lots of things you grow as a house plant, like philodendrons and cactuses, tropical cactuses, epiphyllums, and some orchids up there are all epiphytes, and this is more or less what it would look like in nature. So that's again having knowledge of the plant so you can interpret that for your home environment. Unfortunately, yeah, most homes don't have the right environment for that, and people put the plants way too deep in the shade, especially things like philodendrons actually like quite a lot of sunlight. So down here is much more of a deep forest floor environment, and over here you would find lots of the kind of things that like deep shade. So lots of aroids, monsteras, philodendrons start out on the forest floor, but they do eventually go up to become epiphytes. So here's a syngonium that's starting out on the floor, and here are things like Coelogenella that we also grow in our homes, and over here Tradescantia, and these plants are not receiving any direct sunshine at all. They are receiving ambient light, but not direct sunshine. And there's a difference in that with the home environment. If you put your plant right in the back corner away from the window, your walls and the roof is blocking out all the ambient light. The plants are not actually technically getting anything. And I'll show you something interesting about this leaf. What you can see is also adapted to low light because it has the deep purple red on the underside. And if you look at the surface of the leaf, it's got a bit of a shine to it. And that is to do with incoming light. So there's the cells on the surface of the leaf act as little lenses, and they focus the light onto the chlorophyll inside the leaf. Here's an example of a plant that's been getting too much light. This is an ant plant, a hygnophytum, and this is something you usually buy amongst the succulents in the garden center. And so this plant, we made a bit of a mistake here. We put him in a full sunspot, and he wasn't ready for that, and so this one side especially was getting lots of hot sun in the afternoon, and so this one side over here has been damaged. And that's a big thing to watch out for with houseplants, is to not put them in hot afternoon sunlight. This is a spathiphyllum. It's a very common houseplant, and you can tell it's getting too much light because the leaf is quite a light green and even with yellow edges everywhere. What it should be is more like this leaf, a very nice dark green. And this is also a case where the plant is standing on a spot where it's getting full afternoon sunlight, and so these leaves are getting quite hot. Even though it is a warm tropical house, it's getting even too hot for that, and so the leaves are busy being damaged actually. In addition to that, there's something else to mention, that plants with thinner leaves are usually plants that need lower light, while things with thicker leaves can usually take much more sunlight, and that's usually a generally good indication for all kinds of house plants. So if you look back up there at the ant plant, you can see it's got quite thick leathery leaves, where these leaves are quite soft and thin. And here we are in the desert house, and so obviously lots of succulents, and people generally think if it's a succulent and it grows in the desert, it needs full sunshine, but that's not always the case. Lots of desert plants are adapted to surviving with heat and drought, but and have lots of tricks to survive with excessive sunlight. In this glasshouse, there's good examples of the color scheme. For example, again, dark, of light blue, grey-green colors which reflect sunlight and therefore keeps the plant a bit cooler. There are cacti that have white fluff around them, which also reflect sunlight. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the plant mustn't be put in a full sun spot. That again comes to the example of know your plant so you know what to do with it. So there are a couple of examples in the glasshouse of succulent plants that actually prefer to live in the shade. So here's an example of an Haworthia that's very happy over here in a rock crevice, and it doesn't receive any full sunshine throughout the entire day, but it does receive ambient light. This is kind of how it would be in nature as well, usually quite hidden under other shrubs. There's still light can still come through the shrub, but quite a lot of it has been shaded away. So if you look right under there is the Haworthia, and also covered. The plant itself even is half buried and covered in leaves, and that's also quite normal. So here we are in the glass room, a completely different and even more artificial environment than the big glass houses. And here we also grow Haworthias for display. And because, as I mentioned, Haworthias don't like such full hot sunshine, we have a structure that's been built for them to block out most of the sunshine during the day. And this is for the summertime, but in the wintertime it gets too dark. And so instead of removing this whole thing the whole time, we have an artificial light for them. And that comes down to, again, knowing your plants, knowing that there's a difference between summer light and winter light. And just because you've put your Haworthia in a back corner to protect it from the summer sunshine, you have to bring it forward in the winter so that it can still have the same level of light. So to wrap up, understanding where to place your house plants in your house comes down to knowing the plant you're growing. Know the names, you can do research on the plant. Also looking at its characteristics, whether it's a succulent plant or a tropical plant. And never assuming just because it has certain characteristics that that's a dead straight indicator of where it's supposed to grow. Sometimes succulents do like to grow in the shade, and sometimes tropical plants do like to grow in the full sun. So if you're looking for more inspiration and ideas where to place your plants in the house, come and visit the Hortus.